Hey everyone, Kaz here from Two Book Watch Knobs. I am very excited today to be talking to you about the Boom Christopher Ward C63 Sealander GMT 39mm. This is a very interesting watch. It's not typically a watch that I think I would have picked for myself, which is why I'm really excited to have spent the opportunity to review it and to have it in my possession and to wear it for so long. And so huge thank you to Christopher Ward for allowing me to do that. So this is the 39mm. There's a version in 36mm. There's a handful of different color dial options and strap options and variety and things like that. So this is going to be a very, very interesting review just because, like I said, it's not typically a watch I would gravitate towards. So I'm very curious to hear everyone's thoughts on some of the things that I'm going to call out. My ultimate goal is really to help you determine if this is a good purchasing decision for you to make, if this is something that's worth your time, if it's something that you think you want to add to the collection. I'm going to do my best to call out things I haven't seen or heard in other reviews, and really just try to make this worth your time. With that said, if you like the channel, if you like the podcast, if you like Two Broke Watch Knobs, our video reviews, please subscribe to the channel. If you don't check out our podcast, go and check out our podcast. You can find that on the website. You can find that at most podcast places that exist, I guess. I don't know. I'm not really entirely sure where it goes. It's around. You'll find it around. But with that said, let's jump back into the review. Boom, back here on my desk camera. So for those who are familiar with our video reviews, we have to go through our stations of watch reviews. We're going to be talking about the case. I'm going to talk about the bracelet. I'm talking about the dial. I want to talk a bit about the movement. There's a couple things with the movement I want to talk through, actually. And then I'm going to be talking about the overall wearing experience, and then my overall thoughts, maybe who this would be a good watch for, the ethos of the watch, really try to give you a sense of if this would make sense for you if you were considering it. So with that said, let's jump into it. Let's talk about the case. So this is a very interesting watch. When I say 39mm, most people will think that's going to be on the smaller wearing side. Generally in the watch community, anything under 40mm is, everyday wearable, which this definitely is, but it's going to wear a little bit larger than I think 39mm might lead you to believe. And so I want to chat through why. Let me take this off wrist. So stated diameter of the watch, and I measured it from the top of the crown here to the side. So at the diagonal, I did not include the crown. At the diagonal, it is about 39mm. It's a little bit over, but I would say stated 39mm diameter is correct. The stated lug to lug width is 45.8mm. It looks like. I have my notes over here, so you're going to keep seeing me do, a little bit of head action, which is fine. 45.8mm, which is technically correct if you're counting the lug width at the end of the lug there and the end of the lug there. Because this bracelet does not articulate at the joint here, your actual lug-to-lug wearing experience is going to be larger. Why is that important? Depending on your wrist size and your wrist shape, this might wear a bit larger than you think a 39mm watch would. It will encompass a larger portion of your wrist. This measurement here, if I'm counting the true lug-to-lug wearing experience measurement, it's about 50mm. So you could say 50mm lug to lug, 39mm in diameter, which gives you a bit of a sense of what that would look like or what that would potentially feel like. But if you look at it here, it still looks appropriate. This is about the max of what I would wear in terms of a wrist size. It does go down and curve around the part of my wrist appropriately. Doesn't feel uncomfortable, but like I said, this is about the max that I would wear. And my wrist size is 6.75 inches. So if you're a similar wrist size to me and you're aware of what your kind of comfortable proportions are, this would probably be maxing you out as well. If you didn't want to max out your wrist girth, you could look at the 36mm version as opposed to the 39mm version. What is also supporting the watch wearing a bit larger than normal is the stated thickness on the website is 11.8, which is technically correct if I'm not counting the case back. Like if I'm measuring to just right here, kind of right where the crown ends, if I'm measuring from there to there, yeah, that's about 11.8. But if I'm measuring from the top of the crystal, technically, the crystal kind of protrudes out from the top of the bezel a little bit. If I'm measuring from there all the way down to the case back, or even just all the way down to where these lugs extend, because that's a pretty similar-ish distance there. It's closer to 13.5, 14 millimeters. So again, not a deal breaker, but maybe a bit larger of a wearing experience than you might expect from our 39 millimeter watch. That's not to say it feels disproportionate. It actually feels like a very solid and secure watch on my wrist, which we're going to talk about when I get to the bracelet portion. So just a bit of notes about the actual wearing experience there. This is a fixed GMT bezel. It is very nice. The actual depressions here for the actual 24-hour scale are really in there, incredibly legible. It's all aligned very nicely on this timepiece in particular that I'm reviewing. I want to talk a little bit about what the case is doing in terms of the design ethos. So, if we're talking about a watch in regards to its disparate parts, so the dial, the case, the bracelet, the clasp, even like the movement to certain extents, all those different parts of the watch, not just this watch, any watch, all the different parts of any watch are trying to do different things to allow the watch to really create its own vibe, create its own ethos. And generally, they're all trying to do similar or same things. What's interesting here is the case is doing something a bit differently aesthetically than the bracelet and the clasp are doing, and that's really trying to not make the watch feel too big. There's a series of polished and rounded elements on the watch case that are doing its best to temper the visual weight, and I think the overall potential largeness of the wrist presence of the watch. So there's three polished elements I want to talk about, and we're going to go from less subtle to we're going to go from more subtle to less subtle. So let's talk about that. The majority of the watch, as you'll notice, is brushed, and that really kind of lends itself to the idea of this being like a rugged everyday, like tool GMT and everything like that. So with that said, the first polished surface that I think is really trying to temper the overall visual weight of the watch, it's this first one here. This is the most subtle. So can you see? Yeah, you can see it on the screen, I hope. Right at the edge here where the top part of the bezel of the fixed GMT bezel meets the side, it is beveled and polished there. If I roll it against there, you see that. You see that part where it's kind of there we go. Super bright. That is polished. And actually, it's really cool. It allows you to, when you check the time on your wrist, it actually allows the GMT bezel to pop a little bit and really increase the legibility. So that's the first thing I noticed in regards to curves and polished surfaces. The second sort of middle subtlety is a pretty standard one you'd see right here at the top part. Again, this area where this could have been left as, a bit of a harder edge, kind of like how it is on the bracelet. Remember when I was talking about before how the bracelet and the watch are, treating different aspects of design differently to create an effect. This is just a very kind of standard, beveled and polished really well. You can see it there kind of in the light. So again, that is adding to the overall roundness, or that's trying to emphasize the curvature of the watch and de-emphasize maybe the potential bulky nature of it. Now, my absolute favorite part of the watch case. Let me actually take a second to get my fingerprints off of it, because I want everyone to see this and appreciate it. I could have polished it better. That's fine. Do you see that polished surface there? It's starting. This is absolutely beautiful. It's starting from there, and it's actually extending all the way here and protruding right into the crown. And you see the bottom of the case has a very similar curvature to it, also polished. And these two different polished surfaces that are sandwiching this matte or this brush surface here in between, and they're meeting right at the juncture of the crown. This is giving the watch case such a beautiful, almost aerodynamic feel. It actually gives me a bit of a aviation design vibe to it. This is one of those things that if it weren't here, this watch would feel very clunky. But because of how I guess the designers really tried to maximize the use of polished surfaces and curves, like it actually creates this very nice narrow taper to the side of the case. It also really gives you a nice vehicle for actually turning the crown. Like the way these two polished surfaces come and wedge here into each other, or really continue to sandwich this matte surface here, it actually gives you a very nice spot to comfortably turn the crown on the watch. So those were all the main points I wanted to chat through on the watch case. It is very, very, very interesting, and I want you to keep, especially some of those counterpoints between polished and curved surfaces and non-polished and curved surfaces. I want you to keep those in mind as we transition to the bracelet. So I want to talk about the bracelet. This thing is entirely brushed. There is not a polished surface I could find on the bracelet at all, and what you'll notice is it does not take a similar treatment to the case. This case is trying to balance all these polished and curved surfaces to give you an impression of, maybe a less, like I keep saying it, less bulky of a nature. Bracelet doesn't give a shit. The bracelet, but that's by design. The bracelet's intention is to feel very secure and very robust on your wrist, and it actually does that very well. There are very few curves on here. These ends, the ends of the links here are not beveled and polished or anything like that. It is all matte. It is 20 millimeters here, and it has the slightest taper, maybe to just under 20 millimeters when I was using my calipers to check it out. That is intentional because if Christopher Ward wanted this to feel less like a tool watch and more like an elegant GMT or quote unquote luxury, blingy GMT, this would have tapered. That taper is generally a feature that you'll see in something that's trying to offer a bit more of a luxury, blingy sort of wearing experience. This is not taper at all. The overall experience is that while the watch case is trying to give you a sense of appropriate scale, the bracelet just wants you to feel secure while you're wearing this watch, and it absolutely does that. I think this is a very fantastic bracelet. It's one of those things where you don't really notice the bracelet because it's doing such a good job. If the bracelet had issues or if there was something odd about it and you noticed the bracelet, the design failed. This is one of those instances where the function of the watch is supposed to be the whole thing you focus on, and not, or the function of the bracelet is supposed to be you focus on, not the way it looks. So I love what the bracelet's doing with the case here. If the bracelet was anything else, the whole wearing experience would be thrown off. So definitely keep that in mind. So again, this is a 39 millimeter watch that's going to wear a little bit larger than you'd expect for 39 millimeters, but but that's by design. It is a very secure and nice wearing experience. Couple interesting things I'd want to share here. These are not screw links, which is fine. Not every watch has to have screw links, although every watch would have screw links if I had my way. These are pin and collar. The collars are fairly large. The collars are the entire width of the smallest part of the link here, so it's not those little like dinky collars and they roll around and you find them in 10 years when you move. I'm not speaking from personal experience. These are fairly large. These are fairly large collars, so no screw links there in that regard. There is a quick adjustment here. It's a little hard to get to on the Christopher Ward bracelet there. It is a little lever down there, and if I just get my thumb in it, yep, I can do that. But that's just because I have a bit of a long nail on my thumb. Someone else might struggle with that a little bit. So I also don't know how often you're going to be adjusting the quick change, or the actual kind of quick adjustment, quick micro adjustment there. So it's there. It's cool. I will say the overall quality and construction of this clasp is fantastic. Again, whole thing is brushed. These interior elements are very clearly milled. The security clasp is actually really nice, even though it's not like one of those double security ones where it clicks and then you have a little foldy clasp that goes over it. Still feels very nice. I actually love the buttons. This is a really small and silly thing, but sometimes the buttons on these clasps, they're like dinky or they're very small circles. These are really, really nice, very nicely finished. Almost like pill shapes or little tic tacs, I guess you could say. So press those, it does its job really well. This is also a quick change bracelet. So if you look here, you see those little, let me try it again, camera, those little levers. Let me use not my giant finger. Those little levers right there. 1, 2. This one's actually easy to use. If anyone watched my previous Christopher Ward, the 12 review, you noticed I talked about the quick release there. That operates a bit differently than this one. This one actually I'll actually do in the middle of the review. It's actually really easy to operate. So you can actually see the quick release is a lot easier here. It's these guys. So you got to get a good grip on those, and then when you squeeze, see that? That's what it is. Putting this one back is actually much easier than other models. So again, you set it up here. You get your fingers set up on the levers. You squeeze them in. You slide it in place. Release. You're good to go. You're ready for the ball, or whatever. Overall, the bracelet, I am incredibly happy with it. I think it's great. I want to talk a little bit about the dial. So I think it'll be really easy to draw comparisons between this and something like the Explorer 2. Oh, it's a black dial GMT with a sort of red-orange GMT hand. I think those kinds of comparisons, they're understandable, but they're also unfounded. Like there are too many things that are different. The font of the bezel is different, the markers are different, the actual hands themselves are clearly different. But what I would say is if you were someone that loved everything about the C63 Sealander GMT, if you loved everything about it, but you weren't really sure about the black dial, or you kind of felt uncomfortable, because some people do, because some people have shared that they feel a little uncomfortable with the any erroneous comparisons to the Explorer 2, there are other dial colors. And the second you look at this watch in another color, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, totally different. Absolutely different watch. So there's green, there's also white, there's some there are other colors on the website. So I would definitely encourage you to go and check it out. But this one is the black dial, and this thing is a legibility monster. The contrast that's created on these applied bar markers with the mixture of the arrow and the sword hands is so cool. I can read the time on this thing from way further than I can on other watches. And like obviously that's just a really tried and true basic thing of any watch. High contrast, better visibility. I have white markers on a black dial. Incredibly visible. So all good there in that regard. The markers and all the hands except the GMT hand are polished. You can see the seconds hand features that classic Christopher Ward trident counterweight, I guess technically, on the second hand. So I have no complaints about the dial. I think it's one of those things where, like the bracelet, the idea is not to totally blow people away with design or anything like that. The point is to be as function forward as possible, and the dial facilitates all the necessary faculties of a tool GMT watch. So very much into that. I do like the date at 6. I think that's integrated very, very well. The width of the actual lines that comprise the font of the date wheel are not that different than the actual width of the actual like hash marks on the side. So it actually allows it to blend in really well, as opposed to having the date window at 4 or having it wedged between 4 and 5 or anything like that. So I like it over there at the 6. Minimal dial text as well. This is just a very function forward dial. It is Super Luminova X1 Lume as well. Lume is fine. It works, does its job. Overall for the dial, I think if I were personally to consider this watch, I'm much more of a fan of color. There are some really cool colors on the website. So like, if you go, I would definitely go and consider checking out the website and look at your options. There's this amazing blue, it's dragonfly blue, they call it. There's also a really beautiful green, hunter green. So again, if you liked everything about this watch, but you maybe felt like you wanted a pop of color, or you didn't want something that looked like the Explorer 2, which this does not, I will go and check out some of the other color options you have there. So I want to talk about the movement. This is a Sellita SW 3300-2. This is the Sellita GMT movement. It's plus minus 20 seconds a day, 56-hour power reserve. It's a pretty straightforward movement. You can't go wrong with the Sellita movement. It is an incredibly available, or at least, it should still technically be available depending on the situation. It is an incredibly available but also high quality movement that you won't have any issues with in terms of it being too finicky, or if you did get to a point where you had to service it, you wouldn't have any issues servicing it at all. two things I want to call out with the movement, but I don't know if these are actual things about the movement or just the fact that I have a review unit. So for those who aren't aware, review units of watches are watches that generally make the rounds to many people who review them, and so sometimes they end up, um, getting a little roughhouse every now and then. So I've gotten review units for watches before where it clearly looked like someone river danced on them with clogs, and I had to send it back. And I'm like, I can't review this watch. That same thing's happened to Michael. I better have him broke watch snobbery. Everything on this watch is fine and perfect, but the only two things that I just want to call out is I don't know if you'll even be able to hear it. Let me switch cameras because I'm not going to be on my desk camera right now. There's a weird double click when I wind the watch. Now I'm gonna stop talking, which is very hard for me to do. I'm gonna wind the watch. I'm gonna see if it picks it up. It is absolutely not picking it up, which is fine. But again, I don't know if that's a if that's a quirk about the review unit or something about the movement. If someone else watching this video has another watch with the SW 3300-2 movement, let me know if you hear what I'm talking about. Like as I click it, there's like a in conjunction with the regular winding. The winding action is smooth. The only other thing I'd like to call out, and again, I don't know if this is just because it's a review unit or what, but you do get a little bit of rotor rattle. So rotor rattle, for those who aren't aware, let me switch to my camera here. This is an automatic movement. It has a rotor in the back. You see this thing moving? That is the rotor. Every time that is able to make any sort of movement back there, whether it's able to do half revolutions or full revolutions around the watch, you see it moving, it winds it winds the watch, and that's able to kind of power the mainspring, which gives the movement life. There's a bit of when I say rotor rattle, you can hear the rotor moving. So I'm gonna shake in front. I'm gonna stop talking and I'm gonna shake it in front of the in front of my microphone and see if you can hear it. Again, I have no idea if you heard that. It didn't look like it, but there's a little bit of a rotor rattle there. Again, if anyone else has the SW 3300 timepiece, or if you also have the C63 Sealander GMT, let me know if you hear that as well, because I am curious if it's just this watch or if it's just something about the watch. And if that's the case, it's totally fine. So some watches are going to have a bit of rotor rattle depending on the situation, depending on the water resistance of the watch, which this one here is stated at, actually I can just tell you on the website. My eyes are failing. I can't read it on the dial. The stated water resistance of this is 150 meters, so that's actually pretty good. I was going to say sometimes lower water resistance watches, you'll be able to hear the insides of them more. I think something else that also potentially factors exhibition cases. Sometimes exhibition cases can let through more sounds as opposed to solid case back, but again, this could be a specific user instance from me and my experience with the watch, but if you also have this experience with this watch or another SW 3300 movement, definitely let me know. So those were the movement pieces. Let's round things out. Let's talk about the wearing experience. I actually love this watch. It is interesting in that it is a 39 millimeter watch, but it does not compromise on what anyone would be expecting in regards to like a tool watch. If you wanted a tool watch, but you didn't have like an Arnold Schwarzenegger sized wrist and you could, wear dinner plates and have them look like pennies, this is potentially some kind of option for you. If you wanted a tool watch that was a GMT that felt very secure and and this was something that was obviously in the price range that you're comfortable with, which we'll talk about in a moment, this is absolutely a contender. And so for me, I have a smaller wrist. I think this thing is great. I would personally probably go for something that was going to be in a color, just because most of my watches have some kind of color flair to them. But I would share that while it is a tool watch and it is very much trying to give you a sense of security and in terms of the wearing experience, like it is really on my wrist, and a sense of robustness, what makes and being very function forward, what makes this watch different from watches that are also function forward and robust and kind of tool watch vibes is where I think sometimes the idea of a quote unquote function forward watch can sometimes be connotated with the idea of a watch that doesn't feel very well engineered. Like function forward means like all that matters is the function and like nothing else. And if it breaks, I'll just buy a new one. So, you know, if it's like a $20 watch, like a $30 watch, because some people do that depending on the line of work they're in or what they do and everything like that. You know, if they have no problem wearing a $20 or $30 watch, and if it breaks, you know, it doesn't matter. When I say function forward and like, you know, reliable tool watch, I'm not really talking about that. What makes this watch different, I think, is if you're someone that wants a tool watch with a very secure and reliable feel on your wrist, but you also want something engineered very well, this is absolutely an option. This is a Swiss-made watch. Like, it has the Swiss-made markings, and that's something that makes Christopher Ward, I think, really interesting in that they're able to offer very well-engineered Swiss-made watches in an environment where you don't have to pay as much as you would with maybe another brand who is offering something very similar. So, and I'll say that as someone that's owned, that owns, quote unquote expensive watches, and then also has reviewed other expensive watches. I'm very impressed with my wearing experience here. So, who this watch would be good for? If you have a smaller wrist size, but you want something that feels more secure, and you want something that also feels like it's incredibly well engineered with a little bit of that nice, this is clearly a well-made product feeling, this is absolutely a contender, for you. So what I would share also is in terms of price, it's going to vary. You're going to be, I'm on the website right now. I would encourage everyone to just go to the Christopher Ward website. But your prices for the C63 Sealander GMT will vary from, I'm in the United States, so these are all USD. So roughly, $1,000 USD to 1,200. So that was an approximation, or 1,300. I'll do precise numbers. The most affordable C63 Sealander GMT here on the Christopher Ward website is $1,090. That is a stainless steel case on either a rubber strap or this hybrid rubber strap that they have. Excuse me. And then it goes all the way up to the most expensive C63 Sealander GMT is going to be $1,315 on the Consort bracelet. It's a bit more of a detailed bracelet, has kind of these almost has like a Jubilee vibe to it. That bracelet would be more for someone that wanted something that was a bit more on the quote unquote like dressier side. What I have is just they, I guess I'm not gonna say it right, but I would say Bader bracelet or Batter bracelet, which would be pretty badass in my opinion. But I'm going to go with Bader. It's just basically these really traditional kind of looking links that you would see on a watch like this. So that's what I would share. This would be a great watch for someone with a smaller wrist size who wanted a tool watch that didn't necessarily feel like you were compromising on the quality of the construction and the production of that watch as well. So with that said, I'm going to give you one more desk shot of the C63 Sealander GMT by Christopher Ward in 39 millimeters on my wrist. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments below. I've had this watch on my wrist for a while. I've been putting together my notes and my impressions on it for a while. So if there's something I didn't mention that you're curious on, definitely let me know. Again, I try to talk about things that you don't see in other reviews, and I try to just not say things that you can go and just get off of the website. So, but definitely let me know if you have any questions on this watch. Definitely let me know your thoughts on the review. Appreciate it, everyone. Let me know what's up in the comments. Again, if you aren't subscribed to the Two Broke Watch Snobs YouTube channel, or if you don't tune into the podcast, definitely go and do that. Also, check out the website, twobrokewatchsnobs.com. We're updating that all the time. It has been a ton of fun hanging out with everyone. Appreciate you. Let me know what's up. Take care, all.